There's going to be an explosion in prosperity because 1 billion robots will do all the work.
So you got 10 years to stake your claim in that world.
The currency supply measured in dollars is continuing to expand, probably expanding 7% a year. It's been expanding about 7% a year for 100 years. People that don't own assets are suffering from that monetary debasement without realizing it. Human capital is getting demonetized. So what is scarce desirable property? Well, Bitcoin simply represents the highest form of capital that the human race has yet to discover. White collar bots are here right now. Make sure that you're not in the critical path of what the AIs can automate.
Michael, hi.
How are you?
I'm good. This is the first time we've done this it's just about 2 years. It was May 24 we did this last. And since then, there's been a continuation of our money changing. I think a lot of people are sensing they're getting poorer, but don't really kind of understand why. Can you explain to them what's really happening?
Yeah, well, I think the overarching dynamic is that the currency supply measured in dollars is continuing to expand, probably expanding 7% a year. It's been expanding about 7% a year for 100 years. And that currency printing goes to finance wars, foreign wars, trade wars, social programs, government deficits, any kind of political program. And I don't think that's new. It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. The last 2 years have been no different.
And would you say, therefore, it is those people who don't own assets are paying for government expansion without even realizing it?
I think everybody pays for government in their own way. It's true that people that don't own assets are suffering from that monetary debasement without realizing it for the most part. Government's expensive, right? It's always very expensive whenever you have political ambitions, and it's got to be paid for either with taxes or with inflation or with some kind of confiscation or regulation of some sort that impairs somebody's property rights.
This opening basically sets up the entire argument. We're heading into a world with massive abundance, but at the same time, most people are quietly falling behind. And the reason is simple. If you don't own assets, you're losing purchasing power every year. So right from the start, he's not talking about AI replacing jobs. He's talking about who actually benefits from the new economy.
Well, I mean, you have the world reserve currency, the dollar, and probably with regard to that, you've got a steady 7% debasement or depreciation against scarce desirable assets that just continues to grind on. Some years it accelerates, some years it decelerates. Then you've got all of the second tier currencies pegged to the dollar. If they're stable against the dollar, the pound, the euro, the yen, the Swiss franc, the DRAM, etc. When they're plus or minus 20% against the dollar oscillating, they're not as strong as the dollar. They're probably debasing just a little bit faster. And the problem is they don't have the ability to create more of their own currency. So they tend to get into currency crises or debt crises more often than not. And then that results in lurching to and fro. And then you've got the third tier currencies, and they're the ones that are losing 10% of their value against the dollar every year, and they probably run more like 14% debasement rates. And then you've got the fourth tier currencies, and those are the ones that are obviously collapsing against the dollar. And what happens, right? The second tier countries, they just suffer from economic stagnation, bureaucratic malaise, and economic stagnation. I would say in Europe, the UK, Japan, you could argue many countries, they look stable politically, but they all suffer from economic stagnation. And in the US, there's still a large section of the economy that's fairly free. And that free part of the economy can create an NVIDIA, or it can create digital intelligence, digital assets, digital digital communications, digital media, etc., self-driving cars, robots, AIs, and things that might create extreme wealth. The way you can tell you've got a segment of the economy that's healthy is you see multi-billion-dollar startups from 20 somethings, or if companies can get to $100 billion in 10 years, if they can create $1 trillion company, you've got a functioning economy. That doesn't mean it's perfect. Even in a functioning economy in the US, large segments of the economy are kind of state captured and not so dynamic. But in the second tier countries, they've got a pegged, quasi-pegged currency and stagnating economies. And the third tier, everybody is struggling to simply keep their head above water, and most are failing. And the fourth tier states are all just welfare states. They're just waiting for someone from the first world to go and give them something.
This part is super important because it explains why this keeps happening. Not all economies are equal. Some are creating massive wealth through technology, AI and innovation, and others are slowly losing ground. So if you're just earning money, you're tied to that system. But if you own assets in the parts of the economy that are growing, you benefit from it.
The land that my house is on in Miami Beach cost $10,000 an acre 100 years ago. It costs $10 million an acre today, 1000x. The thing you put on the land, if you manufacture it with concrete and glass, it did not go up in cost by 1000x because we make glass and concrete much more efficiently today than we did 100 years ago. We just can't create waterfront property as efficiently. Now, people have noted with AIs, the next decade, we're going to automate out all sorts of white-collar jobs. So the cost to get a medical opinion or to get a will constructed or get some legal advice or to compose any sophisticated contract, that's falling exponentially. 10 years from now, we'll get this robot wave, and pretty soon you'll have the robots walking around, and the cost to move furniture around or the cost to paint your drywall or the cost to install a door is going to fall exponentially as well. Just like the cost to get from point A to point B will fall when the cars drive themselves. And it seems pretty clear the cars are going to drive themselves. So certain things are going to get exponentially cheaper. On the other hand, it costs you $50 million an acre for an acre of beachfront property in Palm Beach. Why? Well, because the robots can't make beachfront property in Palm Beach, right? The robots are, but the cost of the house on the property won't go up as fast, because if I can deploy 1,000 robots that cost me, $20,000 each, or I can rent the robot for $100 a month. Imagine a world where I basically rent robots at the cost of $100 a month and I have them build the house. The house may not be as expensive. The stuff, let's say it this way, if the robot can do it, it's not going to appreciate in price at 7% a year. It's going to appreciate at the CPI. Or, when I was a kid, rich people had record collections. And if you wanted to impress a girl, you invited her over to your house and you showed her your 200 records, and that was a rich dude, right? Today, anybody has 50 million songs in their hand, and it is not a sign of being rich. So if I want to construct a consumer price index, which is going up 2% a year, I just put an infinite record collection and infinite free streaming YouTube videos in the market basket, along with something drywall and a bunch of packaged starch that I manufactured at a big factory. All that stuff is actually getting cheaper. On the other hand, if I want to make you feel bad, I asked you about what it would cost you to buy 3 acres of beachfront property. And what you're going to find is that does not get cheaper. If affluent, intelligent, cultured people want it, it's going to get more expensive. It's what I call the Bernard-Arnault test, right? If you want to preserve your wealth, you buy assets that someone richer than you, more cultured than you, more intelligent than you will want to buy from you in a decade.
This is the core idea of the entire video AI makes everything abundant. But abundance doesn't make you rich. Scarcity does anything that can be automated becomes cheap. Anything that can't becomes more valuable. So the real question is, are you owning the things that go up, or are you just consuming the things that go down?
The robots are going to work hard. The cars are going to drive themselves, and once you train the AI on a Shakespearean sonnet, the AI will spit back Shakespearean sonnets just as good as Shakespeare in his prime. And so if you went to school and studied for 20 years to be able to compose, Shakespearean sonnets and great prose, that's getting to be less and less valuable. Just like being able to compose a 100-page last will and testament. That used to be valuable. Maybe that's still valuable for the next 5 years, but sometime this decade, you're going to say to the AI, hey, just compose an entire network of trust and wills for my entire family and then optimize it for which tax jurisdiction? You tell me. Okay, well, give me 16 of them. Now implement it. And it's all going to happen for $10. And it used to be that I'll cost you $10 million. And so hard work and talent are getting, human capital is getting demonetized, and that's really the lesson, which is if you think the glass beads are money and someone comes along with gold, then the glass beads get demonetized and you'll be poor if you hold on to them. It used to be that people that were big and strong that could, work in a farm field had value, and then the machines came along. And it's like, no matter how strong and how hardworking you are, you're not as hardworking as a tractor. So that's not interesting to me anymore. And I think you see the progression of waves. So today, what you want to do is make sure that, you're not in the critical path of what the AIs can automate in the white collar world. And you don't want to be in the critical path of what the robots can automate in the blue collar world. You got about 10 years before the robots arrive. The AI, white collar bots are here right now, and they're going to run pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm asking you about people worried about what's happening right now, and you're saying, yeah, I mean, there are things you could do right now, but you need to be ready for the radical change that's coming over the next 10 years. There's an imperative to prepare for that world.
Well, like, for example, if you had a choice and you're going to spend 200,000 pounds to get a law degree or buy 200,000 pounds worth of desirable property, you might better off to invest it in buying the asset as opposed to getting the law degree. The value of being a lawyer is going to go from here and it's going to get whittled down, right, over time. When everyone gets 10,000 lawyers for $10 a month, right? There may be a living, but it's not by drafting the contracts. So really, most of these things, right? Your company has 10,000 employees. What's your competitive edge? Well, we have 10,000 talented people to work hard. Not really, right? Now, what is valuable? Like who achieves the value? People with influence. Do you have power? Do you have money? Do you have fame? Do you have influence? Do you have distribution? Right? That if you have an account with 5 million followers, right, then you can take an AI generated video and run it to 5 million people and monetize it. If you're the guy that creates the video by hand laboriously, but you have an account with 50 followers, you can't monetize it. So just like, Apple, if you got 1 billion people holding a device in their pocket, you can put any AI you want on that device and you can distribute it to 1 billion people. You have power through distribution. Amazon, they've got distribution, the last mile to hundreds of millions of households. When the robots come along and the cars drive themselves, can Amazon cash in on that?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, because the robot will drive to the household and they've already got the back end distribution channel and the brand, so they can monetize it. On the other hand, if you don't have that distribution channel to 250 million households, you're not going to be able to monetize the robot or the self-driving vehicle in the same way.
This is the uncomfortable truth. For decades, we were told to learn skills, work hard, and you'll succeed. But now AI can do the work. So the value is shifting away from labor and toward ownership and leverage. That's why he emphasizes distribution, because in a world where everything can be created, what matters is who can reach people.
I think there's going to be an explosion in prosperity because a billion robots will do all the work. A billion cars will drive themselves. We'll produce infinite entertainment, infinite drugs, infinite education, infinite stuff. If you can stamp it out with a factory or a robot, will produce it. And then I think you'll just see probably a socialist wave of entitlements where you'll start seeing universal health care. I mean, we already see it right now. Universal health care, universal basic income, universal housing, universal entitlements to transportation, public transportation, fill in the blank, right? What is it that, if you think about in Europe, right, there's this concept that everyone has a right to a list of 27 things and the state should provide them, right? Didn't used to be that way in the US, but in the US, it's becoming more and more like that. Like, I went to MIT, right? They never offered me a drug when I was in college, right? But there was no Adderall. Adderall didn't exist. Xanax didn't exist. We didn't know about those things. If you needed a boost, you drank a Mountain Dew, right? And you stayed up all night. Then it became, every college kid needs to have health care. And then it became, you need free health care. Then it became, free health care means let's give them prescription drugs. And then it became, we can't wait till college. We need to give this to people in high school. And then pretty soon you had models wearing things like, I believe in teenage mental health. And then it became universal teenage mental health. And that became, I believe that every teenage person ought to have unlimited free state-sponsored drugs. And then it became, and we don't want the parents to stop them from taking them. Right? And so I'm like, are you kidding me? Like at this point, we've normalized the idea that everyone should have unlimited free drugs in junior high. And if your parents wanted to stop you, that's a violation of your civil liberties. And that is so far removed from the world where I grew up.
Have we lost the plot?
I think there's this struggle between the Orwellian, future, and Brave New World, right? And Brave New World was, no, we just give everybody infinite entertainment and happiness.
Sex and drugs.
Yeah, right? Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley said, we'll just give infinite everything. So I don't know. What I think, though, is people worry that there won't be enough. That's not the problem. There'll be too much.
What's interesting is this isn't a dystopia. It's actually a world of extreme abundance. The real risk isn't that there's not enough. It's that there's so much that most people don't own any of it. And that's the divide he's warning about. So if you zoom out, the message is actually pretty simple. AI isn't just changing jobs, it's changing how wealth is created. And over the next 10 years, you're either going to benefit from that shift or get left behind by it. The difference comes down to one thing: ownership.